Morning, Charles. Thank you for joining me. How are you?
Hi, good morning, Ruth. Yeah, very well, thanks. How are you?
Yes, I'm well. Well, thank you for taking the time. So this is Destination Education, and we'd love to get into all of the areas that you're interested in as a leader. But I'd like to start by asking you about your own education. I guess that's where all of our experiences stem from. Can you tell me a bit about your own schooling?
So I went through the single sex education route very much from the very start. I went to an all boys prep school in Middlesex up until the age of 13. So a traditional prep school from
Which one?
4 to 13, place called St. Mons in Northwood.
Okay.
And then moved to Harrow School in northwest London, all boys, full boarding school. I'm afraid I didn't really have much choice in where I could go to school because my family for a long time had gone to Harrow. So my parents were very clear that that was where I was going to go if I passed the tests. I had a wonderful time there. And as you suggest, I think your own schooling experience influences perhaps the kind of person you want to be in the future and what career you might want to do. And I knew by the age of, I think, 14 or 15, that I wanted to become a teacher. My friends in the boarding house at Harrow gave me a bit of stick for that at the time, because being a teenage boy and wanting to be a teacher is probably not the coolest thing in the world. But I think
Yeah.
it was because I was influenced by some very impressive teachers. I could see the impact they were having on young people. The lifestyle itself I found attractive, the sense of community, being part of something bigger than yourself. So I knew I wanted to become a teacher. I left Harrow. I went up to Oxford for 3 years. I stayed on at Oxford for an additional year to do my PGCE to train to be a teacher. And I've been teaching ever since.
Interesting. Thanks for sharing. And I know that you obviously taught at Harrow for about 10 years as well, which I'm sure we'll get into. You did the absolutely quintessential thing, really, didn't you? Sort of like if Harrow was your family school, you did Harrow and Oxford, tick, tick. I mean, to what extent did you feel that you said you didn't have a choice, but I guess in your case, it worked out. I think in the work that we do, we often do discuss with parents that the pathway that you design for your child may not necessarily be the right one for your child.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. And I think it's changed hugely. So the days of, you've got to get your name down at birth, that was very much a thing 30 years ago. That
Mm.
you have to get your name down with the admissions team. Otherwise you might not get a place. Now, parents quite rightly are making really well-informed decisions based on gathering as much information as possible from 6 or 7 schools. I met a parent yesterday who's sending their child to Worksop in year 7 in September 2026. And she said to me that we were actually the 7th school that she had visited, and she had spent a lot of time attending different open days. And I think that's completely the right thing to do. And actually, I think all schools, irrespective of their reputation, have woken up to the fact that actually marketing, positive communications, making sure that the experience that a parent has on an open day is sincere and genuine, those things are hugely important now. So yeah, no, it's definitely changed, and I think it's changed for the better.
And you attended those schools. Obviously, you're very young, and I've been speaking with a number of heads. Well, it's all relative, right? Speaking with a number of heads of different generations, and
Yeah.
there's been so much negative talk, especially about all boys schools, and especially about Harrow Eton. Obviously, get it in the neck. A lot of it was Diana Spencer's brother who started that discussion, and then lots of people have said how damaging it was to them. And I just think I feel like it's unfair, because I feel like that's very, very historical. And at what age did you start to board? Did you board at your prep school?
Maybe in the minority and not having boarded before I went up to Harrow.
Mm, mm,
But I recognise what you're saying, but my own experience, I couldn't disagree more. I think
mm.
each person's experience is unique to them. But for me, I had an absolutely wonderful time at school. I loved being at Harrow. It is an outstanding school in every way, really. The single sex thing is interesting, and actually, I think now as a headmaster of a co-educational school, and having worked, so before I worked at Harrow, I worked at Forest School, which is a diamond structure school, so boys and girls taught separately but on the same site. And actually, my wife worked in a GDST school for 11 years. So having different lenses, I think all those different types of schools have a place. But I think the most important thing is that the parents have choice, and that for some children, a single sex school probably is the right choice. I think that you can do some really good single sex education within a co-educational environment. I'm completely convinced that boys and girls need to be treated differently. In fact, up until last year, I was a trustee for an organization called the IBSC, the International Boys Schools Coalition, a non-profit where we promote the education of boys. And we know the statistics are quite damning in terms of mental health epidemic with boys, the increasing pressure on academic achievement for boys as well, and
Mm.
maybe lack of aspiration in certain areas for boys. So I think, yeah, boys and girls need to be treated differently. But yeah, it's
Mm.
about parental choice.
100%. And when we talk about fit, we say
Yeah.
finding the fit. And then that's what this is all about. So parents can hear from more heads and senior leaders and just to have more information to be able to make that choice. It's interesting though, the single sex, I mean, the number of boys' schools that are in, and girls' schools for that matter, that are remaining in the UK. I mean, it's a tiny number, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that reflects a couple of things. I think it reflects the fact that we live in a co-educational society. These are well-rehearsed arguments, of course. Many families want boys and girls to be mixing with one another before they go up to university or the world of work, and I completely understand that. I think convenience is also it has a big part to play. Wanting to take your son and daughter to the same school, maybe wanting them to have an experience that they can share together and memories that they can share together. I think that's an important piece as well. And here at Worksop, we massively benefit from the fact that we have multiple siblings going through the school. There's a really nice family feel. Mum and dad aren't at different schools on match days. They're coming to watch the same fixtures. That creates a really powerful atmosphere here. I think market forces plays a part as well. I think there will always be place for single sex schools, and you mentioned some of the most well-known single sex schools there. I think they will always have a place, but in a really competitive market where independent schools are closing every day, widening your pool to include both sexes is possibly a sensible thing to do.
Yeah, it would seem so. And then interesting that I have a son and a daughter, and I sent them both to co-ed schools. But it's interesting that what you say that they do. What did you say? They need to be treated differently, or they do learn differently. And so, how do you manage that in a co-ed schools, and what do you recognise as those differences?
So I think it's got to be done carefully, and I think it's got to be done in a way that doesn't generalize and accepts that every child, irrespective of whether they're a boy or girl, learns in their own way. The way we do it here is our houses are single sex. It's quite typical in this sector. When our pupils come up to Worksop in year 7, we have a co-educational house. So all the year 7s are together. They have their own housemaster. We manage that transition from prep school or primary schools into secondary schools through that mechanism. And then as the boys and girls get older, they join a boys or a girls house. And we have 3 boys houses, senior boys houses, and 2 senior girls houses here. And then they compete in all of their extracurricular activities and competitions through those houses. They stay overnight in those houses, of course. So I think they do kind of get the best of both worlds. They're able to enjoy their time at school in an uninhibited way, without necessarily worrying about being with boys or girls in their own space. But we're also able to resource those boarding houses in a very specific way to make sure that they are appropriate for boys and girls. And I mentioned mental health, and I think that's hugely important. I think Richard Reeves of Boys and Men, I don't know if you've come across that text, but the statistics in there are really worrying, particularly when you look at things like suicide rates. And I wouldn't ever suggest that there is a plight for boys that doesn't exist for girls. I think we need to look really carefully at what it means to be a young man in 2020, a 13, 14-year-old in 2026. Same for the girls, but I think doing that within a co-educational environment needs to be done carefully. We do it through our PSHE program, and we do it through our pastoral care system, but our boys and girls are taught together in the classroom and socialized together otherwise.
Let's take a quick break to talk about something that can make all the difference for your child's educational journey. I'm thrilled to share that this episode is sponsored by Top Schools, your trusted partner in navigating the complex world of school applications. If you're aiming for a top independent school in the UK, Top Schools offers personalised consulting to ensure your child finds the very best fit with a guaranteed outcome. From identifying those best fit schools to crafting standout applications to invigilating the entrance exams, the expert team is with you every step of the way. Ready to take control of your child's future? Visit topschoolsadmissions.com or click the link in the show notes to learn more and book a consultation today. Use the code DESTINATION for 20% off. That code is Destination for 20% off personalised support for entry into a top independent boarding school in the UK. Now, back to our conversation.
Do you have children?
I have a boy and a girl, and they were at single-sex schools, and they're
Ah,
now together at, so Worksop has a prep school, Ranby House. They're now
Yes.
both at the prep school together. And for my wife and I, it's been interesting seeing the change there. We're really enjoying the two of them being at school together. I don't know whether they enjoy being at school together, but it's not up to them.
Yeah.
So for us as parents, it's been interesting seeing the difference between single-sex and co-ed.
Yeah, and it's hard to generalize though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, as I say, I sent both of mine to co-ed schools, but to different co-ed schools because they are different children and they needed a different environment.
I
Interesting.
think when parents come in, they often expect you as a headmaster or as a registrar to kind of sell the school. And conversely, I say to parents that, yeah, I'll tell you all the things I think are great about Worksop, but you've got to choose the right school for your child. As you said earlier, it's got to be the right fit. I'm not going to force you to choose Worksop because it might not be the right fit for your child. So, having resources like the ones that you produce and others makes a big difference in what is quite a confusing market for parents.
So you're relatively new at Worksop. How's it going?
Yeah, thank you for asking. It was a strange time to start. And also, I finished at Harrow at the end of the spring term last year and then went straight into the sort of new role here. But I'd been appointed quite a long time prior to that. So you have a long period where you're thinking about your future job, but you also want to do a really good job for your current employer. And as you said, yeah, it was nearly 11 years by the time I finished at Harrow. So huge emotional ties there. Still have lots of friends and colleagues there, and family involved. So moving across to Worksop was really exciting. It was out of my comfort zone. It was a school that I knew by reputation, but I didn't know any of the staff here particularly well. I visited the school a lot, as you'd expect ahead of starting. And then, yeah, we hit the ground running in April. And I think as many heads consider, what is going to be my strategy? How much time am I going to spend just sort of looking and watching and forming my own views, and then what changes might we bring in, avoiding change for its own sake. But the first thing that I recognized here was that we needed to have a really clear value system. We've got a really well articulated set of values at our prep school. The values were, in my mind, less well articulated in the senior school. So we completely changed our values for September. And we've been very clear about having those values visible around the school. I spoke to our marketing team who are excellent. And they said, how do you want to make these visible? And I said, imagine what an American high school looks like. I want in the car parks from our lampposts, I want the values hanging off the lampposts. I want the pupils to be seeing those values all the time. And, we will know that the message is getting through when pupils start rolling their eyes when we mention the values. And they're starting to do that. And I think that's a good thing because they can't forget them. And, we really stress to them that you're going to have times when you're not sure what decision to make. Same for staff. And when we're doing our performance management, we reflect on this. Always come back to the values as your sort of touchstone. So that was a sort of change we made early on.
Well, I should ask you, what are those values and how do you see them playing out in the school every single day?
So integrity, compassion, and dedication are the three values. I was quite keen. So I teach religious studies, philosophy and ethics. I was quite keen that they were sort of virtues maybe instead of values, so sort of Aristotelian virtues. And I wanted them to be simple enough that pupils knew what they meant. I didn't want them to be too abstract. And we've built them into our rewards and sanctions processes. So instead of just rewarding pupils for good work or good performance on the sports field or music rehearsal hall, they are now given rewards, what we call values commendations, based on exhibiting the values. And we keep a running total throughout the year and it becomes a house competition. So there's a real sense that doing things of value is worthwhile. As I said, we've also built it into our performance management system for our staff. And that's a really powerful tool as well. And our recruitment materials also include reference to the values. And so it's made a big difference. But as you'll know, you've got to just keep banging on about values and ethos.
You do. And I think the reason is, obviously, I'm in the business of admissions consulting. So when a family is looking at more than 7 schools, in my experience, maybe in this part of the world, they're looking at more than 7. But they're not starting with the values, are they? They're starting with the most obvious things. And I have to come back to, brand and league tables is I mean, I guess those two things do correlate. I mean, what sort of conversations are you having with parents? I guess the conversations you can compare from your previous experience at Harrow, they must be very different conversations because Harrow obviously has the brand and the league tables and the long history. But my question is, what sort of conversations are you having with the parents at Worksop? And are you able to cut through these preconceived notions that, they need to understand that it's a recognized brand and the scores are there?
Yeah, I think the idea of recognizable school brands is an interesting one anyway. When you look sort of historically at schools and their reputations, it changes over time. Harrow is an interesting example of that because the Victorian leaders of Harrow decided they were pretty much at the vanguard of marketing schools. They decided they wanted Harrow to be this really world famous school and created traditions and heritage during the Victorian age to really promote that. And you then see from the 19th century onwards, Harrow has this amazing reputation, but it's 453 years old. Here at Worksop, I think Worksop has had a very strong reputation historically, but I think maybe for socio-economic reasons, maybe because of proximity to major airports, schools in the southeast and southwest remain very popular options, particularly for international families. But what I would encourage parents to consider is come and visit schools, come and see what these schools are like. An excellent school is an excellent school, whether or no it's a sort of household brand name. And the other benefit to being a kind of northern school or a school in a regional part of the UK is access to nature and access to the great outdoors. I mean, look outside here. We've got 350 acres of parklands. We've got an 18-hole golf course. We have rugby pitches and cricket pitches separate from one another. There's no travel to facilities. We've got a climbing wall. We're very fortunate. And then you come to the end of our property, and then you hit a National Trust property with a big lake. So I take the cross-country runners out on Tuesday afternoons with the deputy head. The two of us go out with the team, which is great fun. And we run from here through the school land to the National Trust property around the lake and back. And I think, that's something that's very special. But it's not for everyone. Some people like being near major cities but history, you mentioned history, and history is really important. And one part of the strategy we've put together from September, one pillar of the strategy is heritage. And I really want our pupils to know about the history of the school. It's our 130th anniversary this year. So we've done a lot of work about the history of the school because I want them to realize they're part of something bigger than themselves.
What do you call a student? So they've got what's the adjective of an old boy?
An old Worksopian. Old Worksopian. Yeah, and they're a great group. I mean, we've got just over 8,000 old Worksopians in circulation. Hugely supportive, love the school, and it's really humbling. And I've been fortunate to get to know quite a few of them already since starting.
I saw something just earlier in terms of, you're right, in terms of marketing, it's easy. A lot of schools say the same things, right? Holistic education, there's an amazing outdoors program, fantastic grades and mental health and all of that. If you had to describe the school in one word, what would that word be?
Great question.
Maybe we can come back to it.
I think it's good to put me on the spot and have to think, and I should have an answer. I think probably joyful. Joyful is the adjective that I use the most. When prospective parents come in, year 5s, year 6s, I say, your child will be coming to a place that's full of joy. We're not a kind of happy factory where we just focus on happiness. But I do say, if we get the well-being piece right, if we get the pastoral care piece right, then they will thrive and they will succeed. And I'd say that our pupils are happy and they are succeeding. Now, they succeed in different ways. And you mentioned league tables and you mentioned Harrow, and Harrow aren't in the league tables either. And we don't want to be part of the league tables because league tables don't tell you anything about value added. They tell you about raw results. And, our top pupils will apply and get into Oxford and Cambridge. But for some of our pupils where, they need a bit more support with their academics, getting straight 5s at GCSE, getting straight 4s at GCSE might be a point of success. But it's our job to make sure that we're adding significant value once they come in.
I think the difficulty is that parents are looking for some concrete data. And when we talk about even well-being, I was going to ask you, I don't know, you say, you'll know when you're getting that piece right. Well, how do you know? How do you measure that? Is there any point of reference for that?
We've just been awarded Independent School of the Year for student well-being. So receiving a national accolade is great. We were up against lots of other good schools. We've got what we call a wellbeing hub, where we have on-site counsellors. We have QR codes around the school where you scan the QR code and you confidentially book in to see a counsellor with very,
Yes.
very small lead times. So yeah, I think a national accolade is definitely is definitely a good thing. It's hard to quantify though, and
Yeah.
it's a subjective judgment. But no, we believe that what we do with pastoral care and wellbeing is completely sector leading.
It is really hard to measure it though, and to have those conversations with parents. But I like the joyful. I mean, I agree. I mean, if children aren't happy, then they're not learning, and if they're not learning, then yeah,
Yeah.
they're not learning anything. So yeah,
And
joyful.
parents get one chance at educating their children, and this is something that there's a weight of responsibility that I think rests on all leaders' shoulders. We might be talking about strategies and 5, 10 year visions and whatever else, but for the parent, that's the only chance they're going to have to educate that child. So, we take that responsibility very, very seriously.
I want to ask you a bit about sort of the challenges. So you're relatively new at Worksop, and it's a very different school to what you've been used to. So what are your key challenges, and what are your projects for the next couple of years?
I think the first key challenge was to work out the market
Values.
unity and the values.
Mm.
It's my previous the schools I'd worked in previously have been based in the southeast and in London. It's a different kind of market. What parents and pupils require from their education is different. So I think the challenge was just trying to get out there and speak to as many people as possible. I'm really fortunate that I've got a really strong senior leadership team, all of whom are well established, have been here for a long time, and they've been very supportive. So I've been quite keen to surround myself with people that know more than I do about the school and in some cases about education. And so they've been a great source of support. I think another challenge inevitably was that I took over at Worksop at arguably one of the hardest times in the history of independent education, as many of us did in the sector with the imposition of VAT. So making sure that parents really feel that they're getting value for money, making sure that parents feel that their voices are heard, and that although there are financial strains on all schools in the sector at the moment, that the quality doesn't dip in any way. And in fact, the quality needs to improve, and we probably need to be a bit more efficient with what we do. So we've worked really hard here to focus on raising non-fee income. Because if you just focus on the fee income, then you're quite limited in what you can do. We're reinvesting in our facilities all the time, and we're doing that through development, through fundraising, but also commercializing our site. So we've got a really amazing site. We've got to make sure that it's commercially viable, but doing it in a way that doesn't disrupt the educational experience for the young people. So making sure that weekends, holidays are maximized from a commercial point of view. And that's going really well.
Yeah, lots of weddings, I expect.
Although, interestingly, weddings aren't as profitable as you might think. It's actually things like long camps and immersion visit. We had a school from Shanghai came for 3 weeks in the summer. They had a great experience with us. We're going to actually send our year sixes and sevens back over to Shanghai to have the same experience. We've been doing an immersion experience with them for the last 3 years, which commercially is a good thing for us to do, but also we can then go over there and have a similar experience with our pupils, which is valuable. So
Yeah.
our prep school now learn Mandarin from year 4 onwards. So I'm not sure how they'll get on with their Mandarin when they go out to Shanghai, but we'll have to wait and see.
Interesting. So we, based in Hong Kong, and work all around the region as well as the UK. Our children learn Mandarin in an international school from 3 or 4 or 5 years old as well. But I often wonder, I mean, they're actually going to take a GCSE in second language Mandarin when they're 16. In this part of the world, we have a lot of Chinese families who obviously want their children to learn not only to speak, but to read and write. We don't have the curriculum materials. We don't have the exams in place,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
well, language is an interesting one. We know that nationally the number of pupils taking languages A levels is hitting rock bottom. Here, philosophically, we feel that having a liberal curriculum is really important. So, whilst financially it might not be sensible to be running classes of 1-to-1 or 2-to-1, we continue to do that. We continue to offer the classical languages at A level and the modern languages at A level.
I was just talking to a school yesterday that said that their Latin teacher was probably going to be looking for a job because they had one student taking Latin.
It's a balance. You've got to think because as a headmaster, you're also managing the business, but you've got to think what's right academically. And I kind of feel that the independent schools in the UK, we've got a duty to keep some of these subjects going. So,
Mm.
Latin, Greek, I want to continue supporting them, even if it means we've only got 1 or 2 pupils doing them A-level.
What did you study at university, out of
So I
interest?
studied theology at
Oh,
university, and
okay.
actually as part of theology in your first year, you have to study New Testament Greek. So in theory, I should have a bit of Greek on my sleeve, but again, don't test me.
Quite a lot of heads that come from sort of that theology, philosophy background, and also geography, I see. I would be have to do some sort of
To
survey
do,
on that.
yeah.
I don't know. So I want to return to sort of the conversations that you're having with parents. So if we can cut through all the BS, like we get past the idea that it's not about brand, it's not about academic results per se, and there's a lot of other things that parents need to take into consideration. What do you think are the questions that parents should be asking, and what are your answers to those questions?
So I think it is about academics, but it's not about the raw data. It's
Yeah.
about value added. Yeah,
Can
what
you
kind of
just explain what you mean by value added? Because I think I know, but just
Yeah. So when all of our pupils come in, they do a baseline test. We see what level they're at academically. And then when we're tracking a child, and we do a lot of tracking over their time here, we make sure that they're always achieving sort of beyond their baseline. So some of the top academic schools in this country won't be adding any value. And that's not because they're not doing well, but
yeah.
it's because the children are going to get straight nines kind of irrespective of where they go. So
Mm.
we're making sure that we're adding significant academic value, whether that be by a grade or 2 grades at GCSE and beyond. And that's how we measure success.
And are you sharing that information with the parents, or do you sort of tend to keep that
So
internally?
yeah, we share sort of target and what we call projected grades with them on a regular basis. And we also have intervention methods to make sure that as soon as someone's slipping below their target grade, that's
Hmm.
based on that baseline grade, that we have intervention methods that we introduce straight away. We run academic clinics right from September all the way through the year. So we don't just run them in the run up to public exams. We do them from the very start. And that's because we want to discourage last minute revision or people
Hmm.
suddenly trying to keep up with their studies. We want that support to always be there.
And are they optional for the children?
Again, it depends how they're doing. So for
Mm.
the top performers, it might be optional. For those that really need intervention, then it wouldn't be optional. We'd mandate it.
Mm.
Every pupil has an academic tutor who might oversee 8 or 9 pupils. They do a tutorial each week, and that tutor may decide actually, X needs to go to the maths clinic each week, and we're going to be making sure they turn up. But to return to your question, what questions should parents be asking? I think that's a great one, and it's going to depend on the child. Some parents might, if you had a child who recently was diagnosed with ADHD or ASD,
Hmm.
they should be asking some very specific questions about SEN and learning support in a school. If you have a child who is already one of the best swimmers at their age category at that point, they should be asking, well, what does the sports scholarship program look like? Is it
Mm.
just a scholarship in name, or is there an additional program for them? What's the strength and conditioning look like? How might you ensure that they become an elite athlete in the future? So I would encourage parents to look at your child first before asking questions, and maybe stay
Mm.
away from generic questions and ask about questions that are going to allow your child to kind of push on.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It was probably an unfair question, but also the other way around. We often find that when we approach schools, or the families approach a school directly, they start off on this big, long, like, this is our school, and we do all of these different departments, but without actually asking, well, what's your son or your daughter interested in? Let me take you to that specific area. So I think it's got to be more niche conversations about what's important to that child. But what's important to the child is not always what's the same as what's important to the parents.
That's true. That's true. And something that we stress to our parents here is that, this is a rigorous place and we have high standards. And there will be times when, the parents in the school might not agree, but it's about that
Mm.
partnership. And something that I've been really stressing to staff and pupils from the very beginning is have high standards for yourself and have high standards for the school. But no, I agree. Looking for what interests the children and the parents is important. I think also asking different pupils about their experiences when you come to an open day or a meeting with the head, because heads, I'm guilty of it as well, and marketing teams and admissions teams will all say the same thing. We're brilliant schools, holistic education values. Go and ask the kids, and particularly ask the sixth form pupils, because as a
Mhm.
parent, you're probably thinking, well, what's my child going to be like by the time they're 17, 18?
Yeah. Do you do that? Do you have the sixth formers take around the prospective parents?
We do, yeah, yeah, because they're great. They're a great advertisement for Worksop,
Yeah.
and yeah, they're not afraid to give the unfiltered truth.
I took a school tour this morning in Hong Kong, one of the international schools, and we had a year 8. She was fantastic, and a year 10. But boy, were they honest! It was amazing. It was really quite hilarious, but they were very honest, and it's the best way to get under the skin of the school. What are we not talking about in education that we should be talking about these days? We've done the VAT. I don't want to go back over that, and you touched on it, and that was a very hot topic, certainly at the beginning of last year when it was introduced. But what do you think are the important areas?
I mean, something we're talking about, and I'm not suggesting it's not talked about at the moment, but we are talking a lot about technology,
Yep.
about mobile phone use in particular.
Mm.
So from September, we're trialing this from April, but from September, we're becoming a completely phone-free campus. That's a deliberate decision. It won't be a decision that's popular with our teenage customers, but it's important, massively important, not just because of the effect that particularly mobile technology has on learning, but because I want our pupils to form memories at school that are to do with interacting with one another and being joyful and playing and enjoying the great outdoors. I don't want to see pupils in common rooms sitting behind a screen. So yeah, that we're making a change, a significant change there.
So even in their free time, when they're back in house, there will be no phones, none?
Correct. This is a bit of a spoiler as well, because I'm actually writing to parents with
Oh, then
this information
exclusive.
today. From year 7 to 11, they won't have access to phones throughout the school day. And the sixth form, we're going to introduce a more gradated approach to help prepare them for university and beyond. We do use tablets primarily in classrooms and laptops, but the use of those is very regulated. And I think it's very different to having a mobile phone with social media and so on
Mm.
available all the time. So
Mm.
yeah, that change is coming.
So they will be allowed to have their phones back in house after hours.
Only our boarders in the evenings will be able to use their
Yeah.
phone for a short period of time to contact their families. Otherwise, when they're back in their boarding houses, they won't be able to have access to their phones. So they will have
Yeah.
to speak to each other and enjoy each other's company.
Yeah, interesting. It's such a big topic, isn't it?
And tech shouldn't be demonized. We're using
Mm.
technology very effectively right now, and some of the stuff that the pupils do in the classroom with tech is great. But it's got to be intentional use of tech and
Mm.
not just avoiding boredom or avoiding doing other things with other people. And I want this to be a great community. I think it is a great community, but I think removing phones in the long run will improve things.
Yeah, definitely. We've seen the sort of reversal of that, hopefully for the better. I want to ask you about international students, because obviously we have parents from all over the world, predominantly from Hong Kong, China, and Asia. So how do you ensure that they fit in, and maybe what, are there differences in the way that they are taken in and treated, or any special considerations for international students?
Yeah, I mean, we're really proud of our sort of rich history of having international pupils here. We're particularly proud of the fact that we've never had international pupils all from one kind of jurisdiction. They tend to be from around the world. At the moment, we have a lot of continental European pupils. We have some pupils from Hong Kong. We have some expat families from other parts of the world. So that's great because it creates a really diverse community at the school, and it really benefits our domestic pupils as well. We very deliberately, we don't have international houses. Our international pupils go straight into the boarding houses with the rest of our pupils. We make sure that our international pupils share rooms or are in their own room on a corridor with domestic pupils so that they can be fully established within the community and get to know the UK really well. I think they settle in exceptionally well. We've got to make sure that the parents feel settled in as well. So we do an international welcome weekend before they start. We invite parents to be part of that. We put parents up in a local hotel with whom we have a relationship. They're part of these activities over the weekend, and we finish the weekend with a international welcome dinner, which is great. So the kids get to know each other, the parents get to know one another as well, because it's a big commitment, and 5,000-6,000 miles away. You've got to have complete trust in the school. But I've been very impressed with how they've settled in. Lots of our international pupils really enjoy our sporting offering here. So we've got one of the strongest girls football teams in the UK. Actually, quite a few Hong Kong pupils have come across in the past to come and play girls football and play at an elite level. So I think inevitably the international pupils find their niche very early on, and they have a really strong reputation early on. They're doing really well, and they get fully integrated over a short period of time.
Yeah, it's probably the parents that might struggle more than the children in our experience. One thing I'm seeing, the number of boarding schools. Actually, what's the split for you for boarding and day students?
So about 100 of our pupils board, and so it's about close to 20%.
Okay.
And increasingly, we've got a lot of families who historically might have been day pupils, but they really like to now occasionally board in flexi boards. The number is changing all the time. About 100 of our pupils will board.
And so do you have compulsory exeats, or are they not compulsory?
So quite a few of our international pupils stay with us for the Exeat weekend,
Yeah.
and we fully staff that, and we tend to use that as an opportunity to do fun activities and also go and visit different towns and cities across the UK, so they can have a chance to visit London, visit Manchester. In the summer, we go to some of the local beaches. So yeah, and again, I think it's about convenience and making sure that the kids are having a good time on those Exeat weekends.
Yeah, these lucky kids, they just don't know how lucky they are.
I know. They do have a good time. They do have a good time, but they
Yeah.
work very hard as well.
They do, but I mean, what did our parents used to say to us? Your school days will be the best years of your life. And it was funny, I was talking to my daughter about what I touched on with you earlier, about some of the negative narrative about boarding schools and the trauma and all of that. And I think this must be years and years ago. But my daughter was listening to it and she said, "What are they talking about? I had an amazing time at boarding school." And that's really the message that I want to share, because I didn't have the opportunity to go to a boarding school. I went to an independent day girls' school, a really, really tiny, small one that's closed down. But these kids are very, very fortunate.
They are, and I look back on my time boarding, and it was absolutely fantastic. And I'm very grateful to my parents for allowing
Yeah.
me to do that and facilitating that and the sacrifices they made, and it made a huge difference.
Good to hear. Are they disappointed that your son won't be going to Harrow?
It is a bit of a contentious point in our household. I say, look, it's got to come down to what's right for him. I think he will really benefit from a co-educational environment. But he's unique as all kids are, and he's only 6, so we've got a way to go until we
Yeah,
make a
yeah.
decision there. And my daughter's 4, so we've got time on our hands.
Yes, you do. Yeah. Well, thank you, Charles. I won't take up any more of your time. It's been a really interesting discussion. So we'll put all of the information in the show notes if people want to get in touch with you and your team and find out more about Worksop College.
Well, thanks for your time, Ruth. A really enjoyable conversation. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. If today's episode sparked questions, or if you're ready for support with UK boarding school admissions, we're here to help. Reach out to us at www.topschoolsadmissions.com or follow the link in the show notes. Your child's exceptional UK boarding school educational journey starts with a conversation, so let's have a chat.